So our next speaker is Mark Dodge. He's the branch president and CEO of Desert Resort Management and Equity Management. Mark is a native of the Northeast and has an undergraduate degree from the University of Vermont and an MBA from the Drucker School, Claremont Graduate University. His prior experience is wide and includes both senior management and financial positions in publishing, extreme sports, and HOA management industries. Mark is currently the president and CEO of Associa Desert Resort Management, the largest HOA management company in the Coachella Valley, and a regional vice president at Associa Desert Resort Management's parent company. Please welcome Mark Dodge.
Well, thank you, folks. When Lisa asked me to speak at this some time ago, in all honesty, it was before a lot of the rain, and it was before the drought penalties. The governor announced changes to the drought restrictions and whatnot last week. So I am not wonderful working off slides to begin with, and I did have to change a lot of them over the weekend and evolve both some pictures and some of the content as well. But I think I'm standing here today because I started work at DRM in 2010, which was right at the end of the 2007, 2008, 2009 drought we had. So I started right when everybody was in full scramble to begin what I would call the first wave of these landscape conversions. And so, there was a massive push then, and since then I've seen two more cycles. So today, I'm here to be your conscience, right? Because I know how this works. We got a bunch of rain, it's green, the reservoirs are full, everybody's super attentive. You give it a year, another year of season, another year of people coming in. We have a lot of tourists, we have a lot of people that don't live here, and they want to see the green. So today I'm going to talk about where we are now. I believe as an HOA, as both HOA leaders and HOA management, we have a responsibility to keep everybody's attention on this matter. We do. We have to be the conscience. We have to be the one helping to communicate to the owners coming in from out of town that don't realize how bad this drought is, helping to remind them that indeed it does come every 4 or 5 years. And what we are doing now is preparing ourselves for the next time that we have to turn the water off, and the next time all the reservoirs are empty. So I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of where we are, where we're going, and that's where I'll show you all the photos that the CVW people haven't shown you because they're trying to be responsible communicators. I can just lay it on you and remind you of where we're going to end up again. We'll talk a little bit about good strategies and some best practices, for short-term, near-term, and long-term, and talk a little bit about action items and next steps we can take on. So here's my first guilty photo, right? This is from a story in the New York Times in 2015 during our last drought cycle. But this is a wonderful picture because this is the desert. This is where we live. That little house dropped right in the middle of the desert there, like there in Maine Green. That is the whole valley. The whole valley has been made green, just like that. Doesn't that photo look ridiculous? And look at, you look at off to the left, the trees growing off to the left, where are they getting water from? Right? They're getting water from the grass, the irrigation on the grass on the property next door. I love that photo. And the headline is, is telltale. California drought tests history of endless growth in the Coachella Valley. And this is from 2015. This is at the end of the last drought. But look at the photo. Great photo. Let's talk a little bit about the environment, remind you of where we've been and where we're going. Extended droughts in California, 76, 77, 87 to 92, 2007 to 2009, 2012 to 2016, and arguably the one we just are coming out of or maybe are beginning to come out of now. This is going to happen over and over again. Invariably, it's every 5 or 6 years. We're going to be right back in the same place again. If the future would play out, we had a long gap between 92 and 07, but odds are within this decade we'll have another one. Population growth, these are real numbers. Population keeps growing as it is. There's going to be more Cotinas. There's hundreds of thousands of houses probably already in pre-development in this valley. They're already working on the plans. The population is expected to grow to 1 million in this valley from 375,000 where it is now by 2065. That will probably be outside most of our lifetimes, but nonetheless, it's a real number. And that speaks a lot to the pressure that's going to be on the resources in this valley. There's not enough water if we keep using like we are now to support all those residents. Temperature, obviously it's getting hotter. Extreme heat days, we've experienced that in the last couple of years. It's been part of our drought. It's being hotter, it's more humid, and it is, on the average day, is getting hotter as well. And the answer is, are we prepared for this? No. Not if we keep doing what we're doing. Even with the conservation steps we're taking now, it is still not enough. It is still not enough to support where we are going. And here's where some more guilty photos come in. And I'm not going to tell you, some of these photos are from the last drought, some of them from this one, but it doesn't matter. It looks the same. Colorado River this is so bad, Lakes Mead and Powell are unlikely to refill in any of our lifetimes. That is it. Doesn't matter how many, we get 20 years of rains like this, maybe that changes, but I probably won't be alive 20 years from now, and that's my lifetime, right? So let's be honest. I mean, that's what we're talking about. So we cannot depend upon that system to get us out of this. We can't. Here's another good one. These are probably from 15, actually, and this is, I think, Lake Shasta. But I drove by Lake Shasta in 2015 and saw this, and it was horrifying. We don't see this. This is Northern California, but nonetheless, I think it was Scott that laid out the map. This is all interconnected. Our water is coming from there. We have an exchange thing with the Metropolitan Water District. It's all interrelated. It's all connected. HOAs have to get their water from ground, the canals coming from the north, or from the Colorado River. That's where all of our water comes from. Keep going to the photo. Scott had a version of this photo too, which was just a diagram, but this is the same thing. The Coachella Valley is a desert. It has been made green. And that is it. Scott had the little map that showed the CBWD's district. That is it in a nutshell. And it is green because of the water. Not because of the natural water, because of the water that we put on it. Obviously, to talk about a couple of the other pressures as well, there's a lot of uncertainties about our water supply. HOAs use a lot of water. Older HOAs have a lot of infrastructure, a lot of grass, a lot of trees, especially the ones that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years. There's a lot of pressures on this system. The Coachella Valley, yes, it's been built in a desert, but we have farms. We have this built here as well, which is also a pressure on our system. And Colorado River is drying up. A lot of the water to irrigate those areas comes from the river. When that water goes away, where do they then get their water? Meaning right now we are not necessarily competing with them per se. We're using groundwater, we're using some canal water. There is not necessarily always what I would call competition for the same resource yet. There's pressure on the same system, but not necessarily competition for the same resource. This is part of our equation too. It's east of here, southeast of here, but nonetheless, we are competing with this political entity. These group of people are very powerful, and they're going to fight for every drop of water. Okay, in summary of that, we're kind of where we are. Our rain and drought patterns are cyclical. It's coming back. Too many people here already, arguably, right? More are coming. It's getting hotter. Water is getting scarcer. Colorado River is not going to be a dependable source for us. It's not. And more politics, more fight for the water that's already there. That is a certainty as well. And to say the last thing again, the desert was not meant to be green. We've made it green. Okay, so let's start here. Moving on to where we need to go and what our goals should be. We exist to maintain common area and to preserve the value of the home sitting within that common area. Right? If we do not get our arms around this and at least create what I would call an organized retreat What are we doing for our home values? The desert wants to return to brown. Take the water away, put not enough water on it, it will return to brown. And it will return to brown in places we don't want it to be brown. Our challenge is managing the return to brown, as I see it, right? Or an organized retreat, keeping the areas green that should be green, keeping those areas green that help to preserve home values in the best possible way, and letting those areas go brown that in the whole scheme of things are meaningless. And I know the HOA industry fairly well in this valley. I know a lot of the properties. I know a lot of our properties. Folks, we have an immense number of easy targets. We do. We have an immense number of easy targets that are right there for the picking. They're low-hanging fruit. We don't have to work hard to lean in this direction and begin doing what I would call an organized retreat. Okay, sustainable strategy, right? Most of this stuff is fairly straightforward. I believe in taking complex issues and breaking them into pieces that you can easily manage and get your arms around. And I don't think you have to overthink this too much. We all have easy targets. I will show you some pictures here in a few minutes just to give you some ideas. But the reality is we have a lot of space in our common area, especially if you were built in the 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s. We have a lot of common area that's still grass. We have a lot of common area that now has mature trees sitting over the top of it that's shaded. The grass doesn't grow underneath it. A lot. Easy targets. Convert green space now, start in those areas. Number 2, stop allowing landscapers and gardeners to manage your water without you paying attention to it. Right? Let me do a plug for most of the landscape companies that are here today. There's a difference between a landscaper and a gardener. There is. Most landscapers are good at managing water. They will help you manage their water. You know how to do it, but you got to tell them you want their help doing it. Right? They know the areas on your property. They know your systems. They know the areas that are going to be easiest to let go brown. They know the areas of your property that you can go brown without damaging trees. They're going to know. They're going to be the ones that are going to help you to save the trees you want to save, and they're going to be the ones to tell you to cut that tree down because that one's not worth saving. But anyways, landscapers and gardeners are paid to keep your property green, and that's what they will do if left unchecked. At any expense. We all know this. We've all seen the water bills. I manage one community still. And I can tell you, I pay attention to the water there. I'll show you some metrics here in a few minutes as an example. But in April of 2022, we had a new irrigator on property. He doubled the watering cycle, and we didn't catch it for 2 weeks. And he was watering at night and during the day, and we didn't catch it. And we had a $4,000 water bill that month. And that's just a mistake. That's just a mistake, but it's a good example. If you're not paying attention, if you're not actively managing water consumption, you're going to be a victim to those sorts of things over and over again. Invest in your irrigation systems, your delivery systems, lots of rebates, that's an easy one. Getting more water to the places it's needed, getting it there efficiently without leaks, that's an easy one. Smart controllers, right? The next couple pieces, paying for this, right? We need to start thinking about our reserves. And, we always have all this pressure to keep our reserve funding levels high and to not pay things out of there that shouldn't be paid out of there. I am a vehement proponent of landscape is always considered to be just like your underground infrastructure life of project. It's not. Your landscape needs to be invested in. There should be landscape rows, line items on your reserve study. There should be irrigation rows on your reserve study. What does that look like? I remember working with, back in 2010 when I first started at DRM, working with 2 of our properties up 74, Indian Hills and Somerset. And we laid it right out. We did 10-year plans right on the reserve study. They were going to spend $50,000 a year. Yes, it made their funding levels horrible, but they got in front of it. And they converted, Indian Hills at least has converted probably 60 or 70% of their green space in the last 10 years. That's the kind of forethought you need. Getting those on the reserve, and that may mean that your reserve study percentage doesn't move. But what is your reserve study for? What are your reserve funds for? Preserving the long-term assets of your community. Your landscape is a long-term asset. It's got to be there. It deserves the investment. It doesn't matter if your houses were painted and your roofs don't leak. If somebody drives through the community and all your landscape is dead and brown, that is a value destroyer, right? If they drive through your community and they see maybe something that looks like a little forethought, like you think if you're playing golf on a golf course, they're brown around the edges now, that looks like forethought. That's what I'm advocating. It's short term. We got to start thinking like that. What are the areas we can let go? The next time we get in the drought, we have to turn water off. We have to reduce water. Let's do that in a way where we preserve the center of the golf course. We preserve the important parts of the green belt, and we let the fringes go. Maximum use of incentives, that goes without saying. Right now you can probably, with a sensible landscape install, you can probably get 50 or 60% of it paid for with the rebates, maybe even a little bit more. That is with a sensible install. If you get a lot of rock in, a lot of things, that equation can change pretty quickly. But still, there's free money there. There is free money there that at least Desert Water and CVWD are giving away. They want to give you this money to make the pressure on their system diminish. Last but not least, community leadership. Your management company and your managers cannot do this for you. We need a plan. It needs to be on your reserves. Your reserve, having that be a part of your reserve plan, will hold future board members responsible to that plan. It's got to be there. Community leadership is helpful, but in the last few years, we've had a hell of a lot of trouble keeping board members in some places. We've had a lot of turnover of very tenured board members. They just don't want to do it anymore. So that's complicated, but it still requires now leadership and short-term and medium-term and long-term leadership. Management company can be your continuity. The manager can be your continuity, but we cannot be the ones that are we cannot be your conscience for you, right? We just cannot do it. I mean, we can be the ones reminding, okay, we got to get this back in the budget again, or we got to be thinking there's another drought coming. But we cannot do all the work for you. You have to be a willing partner. Okay, where and how to start. Some of this is a little pedantic. It's very easy to look at it, but I want everybody to think about it in a very small way. What are the things you can do right away? What are the now things? And I guarantee you, every single community sitting in here, there are some immediate now things we can do right now. Replace grass with hardscape and desert landscape. Use the correct materials and use the design. I think we've all driven around the valley and seen a desert landscape conversion that was not designed well. It was a bunch of DG put down, some plants dropped in the middle. They got the rebate check, they probably paid for it, and in 5 years it looks like hell. The plants are mature, it doesn't look good, it doesn't look well thought out. So back to the point that I made before about the deliberate browning. Choose your areas you're brown. This doesn't need to be a value destroyer. It doesn't need to look like you're trying to save money on your water and your landscape. It can look very deliberate. Use a good design. There's not a single landscape company that was sitting in that room at the vendor expo here that does not have design capabilities. They're a willing partner. They do the designs, and I'll show you a photo in a minute. The designs actually quite often look exactly like what you're shown in the planning. I made a point here, purposeful design equals better appearance and value long term. I completely agree with that. A good design will last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and you'll be able to build upon it and move it from there.
Quick question.
Sure.
Just for general information, which things other than turf and bushes and shrubs and trees and various different kinds of trees, which ones should we say goodbye to?
That's an opinion, right? My opinion would be your easiest targets are the turf. They're the ones that use the most water. But I also think we have a lot of larger material, trees and shrubs like that are planted in unfortunate places. Right up against buildings where you have to water them and destroy the stucco in the buildings to keep them watered. You have a lot of mature plants that are planted along sidewalks or trees that are planted along sidewalks that should not be there. So these are all things I think you need to consider when you're deciding, that purposeful browning. What do we take out? What areas we decide we're going to maintain the next time we have to cut water back? Those are all concerns. And there's some areas where, there's nothing worse than a 25-year-old bougainvillea tree that's now 10 feet tall, and it's green on the top and it's woody for the first 15 feet of its growth. And that's a maintenance issue, but it also is a mature plant issue. Should that plant be there? Is that a target for removal? Is it a target to put something else in? And the answer is, you got to talk to your owners out of looking at the flowers and looking at the green, but it's probably a pretty easy target. To my next point, use the correct material. We have a double whammy here because we have a pressure to move toward drought tolerant, but we also have a landscape and environment that's changing here. Some of the plant material we were installing 10 or 15 years ago is no longer right for here. The summer heat is changing. I got to tell you, the last 3 or 4 years, it's predictable. The seasons and the cyclicality of this are predictable. Everybody comes back into town in October and November, screaming about how the landscapers killed all the plant material during the summer and because there was no water on it. And 90% of the time, that's not it. It's mature plants. It's the wrong plants. It's Richard, Orange County plant material, right? That's not meant to be out here in the valley. He taught me that. You see that, and it's the same stuff. You guys don't realize it. It's the same stuff dying everywhere. Everywhere. It's the same patterns. Plants die. Plants don't live when it's 125 degrees out if they're not meant to be living in an environment where they shouldn't live over 100. We've got to start thinking about that. Some of that stuff is sexy and attractive, but if we're going to plant it, we've got to plan on replacing it every couple of years. And from a sustainability question, is that really what we should be doing? Or we should be putting something in there that we know is going to last 10 or 15 years, that it's going to mature to a point where it's a responsible looking planting 10 or 15 years from now. I said return to design desert. That means the movement away from tropical Orange County to more true desert plant material. We've got to go back to that. We've got to go back to creating landscapes with those materials. Those are the materials that are going to do the best here in these drought cycles as we're trying to manage back to this organized retreat to brown. Plan for future droughts. CVWD team talked about the non-functional turf. I see that as an opportunity, right? They are forcing us to not let up. They're forcing us to be mindful and responsible with this. I can't tell you how many times during the drought penalties in the last year where I heard, oh, we don't have to worry about that because there's one tree on it. Right? We don't have to worry about that because we don't want to kill the tree. We're not going to be forced to kill the tree. Go back to what I said before, right? 5 years, we're going to be facing the same thing again. We're going to be faced with mandatory water reductions and use reductions. If we've got one ugly ficus tree or one ugly jacaranda sitting in the middle of a half acre of grass, cut that damn tree down, right? Because that area is one area that we can responsibly let the whole damn thing go brown and get reductions next time around. That makes sense. It looks purposeful. It looks just like a golf course letting the rough around the edges brown. We've got to find our rough. We've got to find our roughs and to identify those areas in 2028, because we'll get back there again, where we can let those areas go brown and it looks purposeful. It looks like we designed it like that, and it doesn't look like we were forced to do it like that. Develop short-term and long-term strategies. We know what this is going to look like short-term, right? We're going to be forced to use less water every year. The water is going to be more expensive every year. We've got medium-term and long-term. We got more droughts coming, more population. The good news is that the landscape, new communities are being forced to plant more responsibly, desert material, no grass, fewer trees, those sorts of things. The bad news is we've still got a lot of stuff that was planted 20, 30, 40 years ago that's sitting there for us to maintain. In my view, we need to have a strategy that recognizes both those pieces, right? We cannot convert, there's not enough money in this world to convert all the grass we have in this valley right now to something else quickly. There's just not. It would involve, let me go ahead and say it, special assessments to start, some very purposeful planning with the reserves, and some very purposeful long-term planning with designs and sustainability. So, first step is you look for those easy targets. Cost avoidance, right? How do we get away from the penalties next time? How do we get away from those tier penalties? Cost avoidance, right? There's easy targets. All of you have easy targets. We may have to do some redesign on the irrigation systems to accommodate, but all of you have easy targets. Let's identify those. Drought management, right? That gets us to the place the next time we have a drought, we know where we're going to go brown, we know the steps we're going to take, and it looks deliberate. And it doesn't destroy value in the community like we saw so many this fall. It was shameful, though, some of the decisions about, frankly, overseeding and water use during the summer. I don't like to see that. And this is going to be kind of against the whole point of why I'm here today, but I am of a mind that we've got grass, we've got green, we need to maintain it that way, but we need to manage ourselves away from it as quickly as possible. And that's contrary to a lot of what we're talking about, but at the same time, let's not be in a position where you have to make that decision again. Identify the right partners. You need a good design, and you need to pay a good landscape company. A good landscape company will help you with your irrigation, they'll help you with your plant material, your designs, and they'll help you with your maintenance. They'll help you make the decisions about when that ugly bougainvillea needs to come out, or what are the other ones that always look like hell out here because they grow too long? The Texas Rangers. Texas Rangers, so they're overgroomed and they're woody 3/4 up and they got a little bit of green on top, and once a year they have purple flowers. Ugh. They look wonderful, but there's probably 75% of those plants in this valley need to come out. Anyways, my point is, Rich, and if you're looking at landscape partners, the comment I made here is look at their designs. Look at stuff they planted 5 years ago and 10 years ago. Look at how it's grown out. Look at the material. Have them tell you what grows best and listen to them. Listen to them. Don't try to manage your plantings and your design, because I'm telling you, you can drive around the valley, you can tell the ones that the board members and the community members oftentimes designed versus the ones that were really professionally designed. And last, look for the easy spots. I've said this a couple times over. Everybody has their easy spots right now. We should be focusing on those for this fall, next year. We're probably, hopefully not going to go back into drought in that period of time. There'll be less pressure from a pricing standpoint. The installation costs will get a little bit more manageable again. That ratio of what we get to rebates to what we have to spend will be a little bit better. Let's look for those easy spots and keep up. Let's try to do that every year. Maximize use of that rebate every year. Spend a little money each year before we're forced to do what we had to do this year and then 2015. All right, I put this slide in because I think it's an important thing to say. Drought-tolerant landscape is not necessarily less expensive to maintain. It's not. It's not, especially the way we often instruct our landscapers to maintain it. I'm telling you, having a landscaper, I'm going to go back to these same plants again, hand manicure a 20-year-old Texas Ranger, right, is not good use of labor time, because they can mow a half acre of grass in the same time they're spending trimming that plant. I'm not saying don't take care of your landscape, but what I'm saying is be cognizant. From a maintenance standpoint, this is probably no better than cost neutral. The material you're putting in, the DG, has to be recharged, it has to be refreshed. Otherwise, it will look like blow sand in 5 years. The rock you're putting down, the cobble, fills up with blow sand. It's got to be occasionally lifted and reset. You can blow it off with a blower all you want, but it doesn't change it. Eventually, it has to be pulled up and reset. There is maintenance there. There's maintenance cost that you do not anticipate that sometimes is worse than mowing the grass that was there you replaced. All right, a real-world example. I mentioned to you I still manage one community. I started working with them in 2018. Irrigation system was a mess. They had come out of their irrigation cost. I didn't put this on the slide. In 2017, they spent over $30,000. They had a really inefficient system. They had owners screaming for green coming out of that the 2015, 2016, that drought in that period of time. So in 2018, they made a purposeful decision to do two things: invest in the irrigation, and they let the property go. They watered to their budget. So $10,279 is them watering to their budget, and they came in at cost. The property looked like absolute hell. 75% of it was brown, and it looked like a mess. The good thing is there's only 18 owners. They have probably 10 acres of grass. We got all 18 owners on board that didn't ever want it to look like that again. So in 2019, we contracted with, I'm not going to do a plug, but one of the landscapers that's here today. We did a turf conversion in a big area around the pool and around 2 monument areas coming up to the property. Took out about 8,000, 9,000 square feet. At the same time, we put a completely new irrigation system in. All new valves, all new mains, all new laterals, all new drips, all new heads, everything. So 8390, the second year, 2019, was partially a product of conservation and partially a product of them shutting off water and not using as much the first part of the year. 2020, new irrigation system in. What happened? Any landscapers want to weigh in on this one? I was not working with the right partner. They did not turn the minutes down on the system. The system was very efficient, delivering a lot more water, and we used more. All right. I learned a lesson there myself firsthand. I was trying not to tell them how much to water. The place looked beautiful. It was green. Nobody was complaining. But we used more water. I knew that was wrong, though, obviously, so I got us unpacked because I knew where we wanted to be. We had a target to reduce by 50% from that 10,279. We didn't quite get there, but we're getting there. Obviously, 2020 to 2021, the short story is there. In March of 21, we did hire a new landscape vendor. And with that, I got a very active partner, and we did reduce consumption. Target is 7141. 2022, 7141. You can see we did get a reduction in cost, but we got a significant reduction in usage as well. Next steps for this community. In September, we turned water down to the percentage of water on our annual budget, and we looked for areas. We looked for target areas. There's one right there. The grass doesn't grow under those trees. That's being removed this fall. Same thing there. Big green area, that thing there with a couple trees on it, that's coming out this fall. We have another 10,000 square feet in turf reduction that we're doing in the fall of 2023. Other easy targets. I mentioned before, identify those easy spaces in your communities. This is one. This is at Corskin Villas in South Palm Desert. Their entire fringe of that property, remove the grass around the fences, remove the grass from under those trees in the middle photo. Wasn't growing there anyways. Put some purposeful looking landscape in, and again, that area on the left too. $20,000, they spent more than that obviously, but again, low impact, low visual impact. It's around the fringe edges of the property. It's not in the center green belt. The center green belt of those properties are the easy targets, but they're also the ones you're gonna get the most hassle over when you convert them. Look for these easy areas. Here's a big one. This is actually one of CVWD's photos, and I saw it in one of the slides earlier. This is wishing for the best. This is when you get your big grassy areas, what you want to do. It has to be much more purposeful when you have the big open grassy areas. Purpose of this slide was showing design. The slides on the left are what most any landscaper you're working with are able to do. On the right is the plantings. I think, it may not look exactly the same, but pretty close. Conceptually, you can look at those photos on the left and you can tie that to what actually went in on the right. Importance of working with a good plan and a good landscape provider. Here's another good example. You see this a lot in the desert, right? You're driving down, you got grass right up against the wall's getting sprayed, the wall's getting destroyed, the stucco won't stick to it, it's delaminating. Get the grass off the wall, right? This particular photo here, they eliminated half the grass, at the same time eliminated a maintenance problem at the same time. Conclusions. Our responsibility in this room is to keep everybody's focus on seeing this as a problem now. This is not going away. It's coming back. It's cyclical. We have to take the opportunity. Rebates. I hope I got this number right. The two, Desert Water and CVWD in combination, give away almost $20 million a year in rebate money. That's a big number. 14 plus is CVWD and 4 plus is Desert Water. I didn't even tap the other agencies. I don't know what they do or don't do, but those are the two I work with. That's a lot of money. Get your piece of it, get doing something, and get this moving. Even small landscape companies now have design capabilities. Use those abilities. Even if you have to pay for it, you'll not regret it in 5 years when the plant material is becoming mature. A couple more things to think about. Cost of installation. I think we'll see less pressure on the cost now, with the materials in particular. I'm not sure what it's going to mean with the hardscape, with the rock, all the rock we're trucking in, the shipping costs, the freight costs are still very expensive with that. But nonetheless, probably the cost of installation will go down as half the people in the valley then lose their focus on this and stop doing installs. And again, I already mentioned the non-functional turf restriction. It's super important. That is a good pressure that I hope that the water districts do leave on us, because it forces us to look for those easy areas, and it forces us to look for those areas that we can easily manage to brown next drought. And with that, that's all I have.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Go ahead.
I can speak loudly. I have two. What are your thoughts on removal of old or diseased trees that were in shade? Should they be replaced? And how? You have your company. Will you be much more enforceable this year about no reseeding?
I actually informed my staff, asked my staff this year not to get involved in the reseeding politics. We shouldn't be. The community I manage, as an example, we reseeded and we watered at night, and it still germinated 80%, 75%. It still got green. We didn't have to put as much water in because we were watering at night. There'll be options like that. What I would encourage you to do is to look for your fringes, right? Go back to the golf course metaphor again. Look for your fringes. Look for those areas where it doesn't make sense to spend money on the water to try to make grass grow where it's not going to grow. Those shaded areas. When it's 120 degrees out, does the shade make a difference? Because we're not out in it. We're forcing our landscapers to be working out in it in many cases, but we're not out in it. I don't know what the value of that is to maintaining a tree, a dead and old tree that uses a lot of water, just because we have this idea that it cools. It just doesn't. I'm sorry. When it's that hot, it's that hot. In the buildings. It goes back to that age-old question, right? I mean, what we've built here in the desert's not intended to be here. Should we then plant a bunch of trees we can't water to create this facade of shade and coolness? That's where the conscious things comes in. I say no, right? I say no. But again, that is part of the politics in all this. We all have those owners and board members that we have to have this argument with. Go ahead.
We know this is a responsible thing to do, but we have these homeowners that I bought my house because of the green lawn, and I bought it because it is the green. Would you consider doing a Zoom presentation or homeowners can hear, especially ours, can hear their bullet points and understand, the necessity to do this, so it's not just coming from us.
Yeah.
That it's
Her question was, would we do a Zoom presentation? Yeah, and we could. I think this is being recorded now, right? It is.
We are recording this.
So
It will be available later.
my answer to that is this: that is not easy. And there's two ways to go at this, right? There's converting the green belt in the middle of the community that's the most visible and is going to piss the most people off. Or it's getting the fringes, getting the easy areas, showing everybody what can be done, and that it can look tasteful and purposeful and well planned, and then going at the green belt area in the center, right? And then frankly, because we do have 50 or 60% of our owners that come from green areas of the world, I think the answer is maybe we do plan on medium term leaving a little bit of grass. Because if we're left with 10 years from now we're left with a quarter of the grass we have now, that's not a hard decision to then just stop watering that small piece, right? It doesn't impact the whole community. It's just, okay, we're choosing to let the little part of the green belt go brown. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we're down to just the center green grass. We've reduced our water usage by close to 40% since
Yeah, it is. That is, as we're looking at all these considerations around this issue, there's this whole quality of life issue too. I'm a pet person. I'm an animal person. I have too many animals. But luckily, my dogs don't like to go outside when it's hot, so they'll just go pee right outside my back door. So what I would say is, you have to keep in mind as you're moving through this decision-making process, you have to understand the sensibilities and the politics in the community, right? Leave your green belt in the center for dead last. Try to design around those issues. If you've got a lot, pets need a place to go, right? And we don't want them all to go in the center of that green belt area, because then we're going to have the pet spots all over the little bit of grass we have left. Or we're going to have so much dog feces on that little green belt area that we cannot use that, and it has no value. So I don't have an answer for that, but it's certainly something you have to consider when you get that far into it. It is. One more. Patty?
One of the things about our desert, we're a scrub desert, we're really not a cactus desert like Scottsdale up in Arizona is living in both. So sometimes the desert landscape for the cactus, they have to be carefully selected, otherwise you're going to be replacing them after some.
Yeah, so the cactuses are some of the material that maybe is not doing very well here right now. I'm looking at Richard in the back of the room and taking his cues. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can see that every year now. You see more and more barrel cactuses dead. You see the taller cactuses dead, burned. They're not doing well here either, and we need to be mindful about replanting those as well. All right, and with that, folks, I'm done. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So we had a lot of great speakers this morning, and we will continue the talk about landscaping and landscape checks on how we do that here at CVWD. We'll also hear from a landscape architect. So we're talking about, where do we put these things? How do we plant for our spaces? How do we put the right trees in that won't overgrow and cause problems? And then we'll have a panel on best irrigation practices and HOA success stories. So we'll end on a high note. And Lisa was not kidding. We do have a quiz right after lunch, but it should, but it should be fun. So you are now free to go enjoy some lunch in the lunch area with the canopies.